In order to understand pronoun antecedent agreements, you must first understand pronouns. A pronoun is a word used to stand for or take the place of a noun. On the board, we have a list of personal pronouns. Personal because they usually refer to a person, except for it, which of course refers to things. Over here, we have 2 example sentences. Example 1, Naya wrote on the board. Naya would be considered the subject, noun, and the board would be considered the object noun. So we could either say she wrote on the board, replacing Naya with she, or we could say Naya wrote on it, which will be replacing the board with it, or we could say she wrote on it, replacing both. Those sample sentences tell us important things we need to know about pronouns. Pronouns take the place of a noun. Pronouns that replace nouns must agree in multiple ways. A subject pronoun must replace a subject noun, which would be Jasmine and she. An object pronoun must replace an object noun, which would be Dan and him. A feminine pronoun must replace a feminine pronoun, which would be, I just said the same thing twice. Okay, a feminine noun would replace a feminine pronoun, which would be Jasmine, which is feminine, she, which is feminine. A masculine pronoun will replace a masculine noun, which would be Dan to him. And a singular pronoun will replace a singular noun. Lastly, a plural noun will replace a plural noun. So in this sentence, does Dan completely understand Jasmine? We're going to underline the subject noun. And Dan, which would be masculine, and it's singular. And then over here, we're going to do the same for Jasmine, which is an object noun, is feminine, and it's also singular. Now with this, you will replace Dan with another subject pronoun that's masculine and singular, which would be he, and Jasmine with another object pronoun that's feminine and singular, which would be her. And the sentence would read, does he completely understand her?
A pronoun can also be used to refer to an earlier noun or pronoun in the sentence. For example, Dan will explain Dan's understanding of the pronoun antecedent rule. It doesn't make sense why we use Dan twice in the sentence. It just doesn't sound right. So instead we use his to replace Dan. So instead we get Dan will explain his understanding of the pronoun antecedent rule, where his replaces Dan and refers back to him. So it makes sense. Another example is for and antecedents, you will always use a plural pronoun. For example, Jasmine and Dan thinks their project is fun. There is referring to both Dan and Jasmine. Another rule is for either or, neither or, the pronoun depends on the closest antecedent. For example, neither Dan or Jasmine wrote his or her paper. We use single his and single her because of this, nor, and then each one is referring to the subject, Dan or Jasmine. Another example for either or. Either Dan or Jasmine and Naya will turn their paper in. So, there refers to Jasmine and Naya. And Dan is just left out in cold. Okay.
You ready? Okay. Last but not least, we're going to go over group pronouns. Group pronouns depend on singular or plural. Okay, I messed up, so I'm just going to start over. Okay, last but not least, we're going to go over group pronouns. Group pronouns can be singular or plural depending on the situation. Common group pronouns that we hear are club, company, government, jury, team, army, or group. Example 1. The class is meeting in its normal room today. So class would be the group, and its would be a singular pronoun because we're referring to class as a whole. Example 2. The class must turn in their homework by Friday. In this case, we're referring to every individual in the classroom. So we would use their, which is a plural pronoun.
Indefinite pronouns are always singular. Some common indefinite pronouns are anybody, somebody, everybody, nobody, each, anyone, someone, everyone, no one, one, anything, someone, everything, nothing, and thing. For example, no one wants his or her name slandered. His or her is referring to that each person does not want their name slandered. And then example 2, each of the participants has given his or her approval. And again, same reason. Some other indefinite pronouns you should be aware of are both, few, many, several, and others, which are always plural, and all, must, some, any, none, which depends on, again, the subject.
Hey tutors, are your tuties having problem with the pronoun to antecedent agreements? Just remember a couple of things. The agreement must be subject to subject or object to object, number, and gender. So if it's a feminine, you use feminine. If it's plural, you use plural. And if it's subject, remember to stay in subject, and object, remember to stay in object. In the sentence, Dan will explain his understanding of the pronoun antecedent rule. Remember that Dan is the subject, so you use a subject pronoun, which would be he. And if you were to replace his, that's an object pronoun. Now with Dan, you have to remember that this is singular, so his pronoun will also be singular. And gender-wise, it's masculine, so his pronoun will stay masculine. So remember these rules, and you'll have a great tutoring session. And that's the end of our project. Catch you later, guys.